sensitive yet well-documented issue, and that's your father, who went to prison for not paying taxes. Do you agree with anything he did?
Well, I agree in principle the fact that he thinks the income tax is a very destructive tax economically. I think there's much better ways for the government to raise revenue other than an income tax. I think it'd be better to tax people based on what they spend and what they consume, not on what they produce and what they earn. But as far as the legal interpretation, my father was very principled in his belief that the government was collecting taxes illegally. And so he tried to stop that. And unfortunately, he ended up in jail. He's still there. He's 81 years old, and he's sickly, and he's still in prison. But, I've paid my taxes, my entire life. I'm not happy about it. I mean, I wish the taxes weren't there, but I haven't, followed in his footsteps in that respect.
Connecticut's one of the most heavily taxed. The tax burden is extremely high for our state. What would you do if elected to change that?
Well, I mean, I'm running for a federal office, not the state office.
But you could work on,
Well, I mean, I try to change it
through influence
from a federal level. I mean, I'd love to see the state, abolish the income tax. I mean, I can tell you when I relocated to Connecticut from the West Coast 4 or 5 years ago, the main reason I chose coming back to Connecticut was because Connecticut had a lower state income tax than New York and New Jersey. And so because of the low taxes, I came into the state, and not only does the state of Connecticut get to tax me, but they get to tax all my employees who now work in Connecticut and who might work in other states. And so the key for Connecticut, if Connecticut can drive down their taxes and reduce their regulation and make it a place where entrepreneurs want to settle, where people want to start businesses and hire people, then the state's going to have a stronger economy and a better tax base.
Brian?
Peter, I really do want to ask you, we've been focusing a lot on finances, but I do want to ask you, foreign policy, Afghanistan, that's a hot topic right now. Everyone's waiting for the Obama administration to make a decision. What would you do?
Unfortunately, I think, the government is getting too involved overseas. I think we've made too many mistakes. It looks like, we've got another Vietnam going on in Iraq, and I was, opposed to our intervention at that time. I believe that we need a very strong defense. I think that's the single most important function of the federal government. In fact, the only reason that the federal government has the power to tax is so it can defend the country. Otherwise, the founding fathers weren't even going to give it to them. So I think we have to focus on national defense and protecting American interests. But I don't think we need to get entangled in so many foreign issues. We have troops all around the world. And the bottom line is we can't even afford it. I mean, we're borrowing money from China. We're borrowing money from Japan to fund all this. We're going broke. We have to find a way to cut back on unnecessary expenses, and I think we're probably spending too much money overseas. But where there are legitimate threats, if there's a legitimate threat in Iran or Iraq or Afghanistan, we need to deal with it. But we need to deal with that threat. We don't need to focus on invading other countries or trying to rebuild nations. We have to protect American citizens, and if that requires some intervention, it should be precise and targeted, and then we need to leave.
So pull out of Afghanistan?
I don't know what we're accomplishing there. I mean, nobody's ever accomplished anything in Afghanistan. I mean, I don't have all the intelligence that some of the people might have who are elected right now. But from my perspective, just as an ordinary American citizen, I think we're wasting our time and money over there.
Rick?
Peter, it sounds like you have some libertarian leanings, at least leanings that libertarians would be comfortable with. How about if we look at a few social issues here? Abortion.
Well, I mean...
Legal?
Well, I mean, I'm pro-choice, but I don't think the federal government should be funding it, although I don't think the federal government should fund a lot of things.
Marijuana.
I don't smoke any.
But should it be decriminalized? Should the government?
You're talking about medical marijuana?
Medical marijuana, yeah. Should the government?
Look, I mean, in general, I would be in favor of decriminalizing it.
Yeah. Would you say on social issues you're more moderate to the left, or how would you describe yourself?
I believe that the government should stay out of the economy and stay out of our bedrooms. I think the government does more harm than good when it does this.
Gay marriage, for example?
I've got no problem with gays marrying, although, again, it's not a federal issue, so I don't think I would have anything to say about it as a senator, but if I was the governor of the state and there was an issue, I have no problem with gays marrying.
What is your strategy for winning in terms of advertising, getting out there?
Yeah, I mean, we're going to do all that. I mean, I'm going to get out there. I mean, look, I outraised...
they're the ones already out there. They're, sending out press releases twice a day, and they're running commercials.
Yeah, meanwhile, I out-fundraised all of them without sending out any of that stuff. I mean, in the last quarter, I raised more money from more people. I have over 10,000 people that have donated money to my campaign. So I'm going to continue doing that. But I am going to, do some more traditional campaigning. We got many, many months until the election. So I'm going to be out there. I'm also going to be mobilizing hopefully 10 to 20,000 supporters from around the country to both come to Connecticut, or people who are already in Connecticut, to work on the campaign. I'm going to have people working for my campaign from their laptop computers and using their telephones. So I think I'm going to have a real grassroots campaign to help raise voter awareness of my name and my issues in this state, to help me raise funds within the state and all around the country.
Peter, how does a guy who announced his campaign on Morning Joe, though, relate to the average Connecticut resident, relate to the average person? You know, as opposed to a lot of other candidates, they went to a town green, or they went to, the steps of some, their hometown.
I think Linda McMahon announced on MSNBC as well. I think it was a different show. But, I mean, the announcement is simply, just to get something out there. To get something on the internet, so people know that I'm running, because there was a lot of speculation as to whether I was going to run or not. So I wanted to get that out there, and so a medium like that is a way to do that. But just because I went to New York City to announce my campaign doesn't mean that I'm out of touch with what's going on in Connecticut. But again, the main issues confronting Connecticut are the same issues that's confronting New Yorkers or Californians, for that matter. It's what's happening in Washington that's undermining all of the states, and anything that we try to do as a state, is going to be undermined by what's going on in Washington, what's going on at the Federal Reserve. So somebody has to go there and put a stop to that.
Rick?
It's great to hear a candidate who speaks his mind about so many things. But if I'm an elderly person and I'm thinking about voting for you, and I'm thinking, well, what if he monkeys with Social Security? Or, what if he monkeys with my health care? What can you say to people who depend on government programs that appears like most of America likes? What can you say to those people?
Well,
do you want to privatize Social Security? Do you want to dismantle Medicare?
I think the people that like Social Security don't really understand that it's a Ponzi scheme. A lot of people that were investing with Bernie Madoff liked it until they found out that it was a scam. Well, Social Security is run on the exact same principles that Bernie Madoff ran his investment scheme.
Keep putting money into it.
Initially when Social Security was started, it was sold to the American public as insurance, where money was going to be set aside, where tax revenues were called premiums, and they were going to be invested and returned. But that's not what happened. Now it's pay-as-you-go, which is a Ponzi scheme. And unfortunately, we've run out of, chain on this chain letter. And the young generation of Americans are not going to be able to make the payments to the baby boom. As I said, if we try to enforce those payments, they're going to leave the country. So we need to deal with this issue. This is not something that we can avoid because it's politically unpopular. I understand there are some people, unfortunately, that now depend on Social Security. If the government had never set up the system in the first place, they wouldn't need it. They would have had their own savings. They would have had their own retirement. So I recognize that, unfortunately, some people need to get it. We need to find a way to make sure that people who absolutely depend on their Social Security to survive.
Or health care
But there are a lot of people that don't need it. There are a lot of people that get Social Security. There's a lot of people who are paying the tax who are a lot poorer than the people who are getting the checks. And the people have to realize that that's not fair. There is no fund. The money was embezzled by our politicians years ago. And it doesn't make sense to steal money from young people today who didn't vote for those crooks, to fund this Ponzi scheme. So we have to have people in Washington who are going to, stand up to these special interests and say, look, this is a serious problem. And right now the politicians figure, oh, it's no big deal. We'll just print money and pay these benefits. But if we do that, the money's going to have no value. And what good is it going to be to somebody to get a Social Security check, but they can't buy anything with it? That's going to be a big problem.
Peter Schiff, thank you very much. I wish this program was an hour because we could go on for a good amount here. Rick Green from the Hartford Courant, Brian Lockhart from the Stanford Advocate, and Peter Schiff, candidate for the Senate. Thank you so much. We hope you'll join us again.
Sure.
Thanks for watching us this Sunday. Jets, Dolphins coming up later right here on Channel 3.